911. What's your emergency?
She's not coming up. She's under the water. He won't let her go.
Ma'am, who's under the water?
The whale is holding the trainer. Please, someone help her.
The line crackles. Then, silence. That's how the show ended. No standing ovation, no curtain call. Just sirens and the collective shock of hundreds of people who had just watched a dream turn into a nightmare. Rachel Langford's connection to the ocean wasn't born from living near it. In fact, she grew up hundreds of miles from the nearest coastline in a quiet Midwestern farming town. There were no gulls overhead, no scent of salt in the air, only endless fields and dusty roads. But inside her small bedroom, the ocean lived. Stacks of worn encyclopedias filled with marine life sat beside her bed. Faded posters of dolphins and killer whales lined her walls. While other kids were outside chasing fireflies, Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching the tall dorsal fin of an orca over and over until she could draw it from memory. She could name every dolphin species in the world without looking it up. She could mimic their clicks and whistles with uncanny accuracy. Her parents thought it was a phase. It wasn't. It was a tide that pulled her deeper every year. At 13, that tide carried her west. Her parents drove for 2 straight days until the California coast rose into view. And there, shimmering in the sun, was OceanRealm, the largest marine park she had ever seen. When she saw her first orca, she didn't squeal or wave like the other kids. She simply stood there, still as stone, eyes locked on the giant moving effortlessly through the water. Something shifted that day. It wasn't a decision, it was a promise. She wouldn't just visit the ocean, she would belong to it. Rachel didn't arrive at OceanRealm as a star trainer. At 18, she took the only job available, sanitation staff. She mopped the walkways, scrubbed the algae stains from the tanks, collected fish scraps from the feeding areas. But she didn't leave when her shift ended. She stayed, leaning on her mop handle, memorizing the hand signals used in training sessions, studying how the whales responded, noting the difference between a cue for a trick and a gesture for reassurance. She listened to what most ignored, the pauses, the stillness between commands, the quiet language between human and whale. Management noticed her persistence. Soon, she was promoted to assistant animal care technician, then apprentice trainer, and finally, a full-fledged orca trainer. Rachel wasn't the type who lived for applause. Her gift was building trust. She specialized in behavioral enrichment, designing puzzles, challenges, and new routines to keep the whales mentally sharp. And that skill led her to Kraken. Kraken wasn't born in a tank. His first memories were of the wild, the freezing waters off Norway, his pod's haunting calls echoing beneath the northern lights. For 2 years, he swam beside his mother, learning the orca's ancient language. Then came the nets. One moment, he was chasing herring through a cloud of bubbles. The next, panic, thrashing, the pod scattering. He was hoisted from the sea, separated from his mother, and lowered into a cramped metal container filled with unfamiliar water. His world shrank from endless ocean to glass walls. He was transferred from one marine park to another, renamed, branded, taught to perform tricks for frozen fish. But he never adapted. Some whales learned to live in captivity. Kraken did not. He often floated alone, slow and still. Sometimes he refused to eat. Sometimes he ignored cues entirely. And sometimes he acted out. There were whispered stories, one about a trainer who accidentally fell into his tank years before and never resurfaced alive. Official reports called it an accident, but the legend followed him like a shadow. When Rachel met Kraken, she didn't see a monster. She saw an animal with wounds no one else was willing to face. February 16th. A perfect California Sunday, bright skies, still water, a sold-out matinee crowd. Rachel zipped up her wetsuit, checked her whistle, and headed to the stage. Kraken had been unusually cooperative that week, more responsive, more playful. Other trainers warned her not to drop her guard, but Rachel believed the trust they'd built was finally breaking through. The show began like clockwork. Music swelled from hidden speakers. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. Kraken breached, sending a wall of water over the first few rows. Laughter rippled through the stadium. Rachel gave the spin signal. Kraken obeyed perfectly. They moved in sync, human and whale, in silent conversation, invisible to everyone else. Then came the finale, a side-by-side dive, followed by a synchronized breach. Rachel stepped closer to the pool's edge, arm extended for the signal. In less than a second, everything changed. Kraken pivoted. His jaws closed around the base of Rachel's ponytail, not crushing, not tearing, just holding. Then he yanked. Rachel disappeared beneath the water before the audience could process what they'd seen. At first, some clapped, thinking it was part of the act. But the trainers knew better. They blew emergency whistles, slapped the water, tossed fish. Nothing. Kraken ignored every cue, every lure. He spun her violently, then released her just long enough for her to gasp before pulling her under again. The water boiled with white foam. The music cut mid-note. Emergency lights flashed red, sirens screaming across the stadium. Parents shielded their children's eyes. Others filmed on their phones, unsure if they were witnessing a stunt or a killing. For 30 minutes, Kraken kept her in his grip. Only when he was lured into an isolation pool did he finally let go. Rachel was gone. The autopsy listed blunt force trauma, multiple fractures, and drowning. Kraken floated in the center of the pool, motionless, as if nothing had happened. The stadium emptied in silence, like a funeral with no words. Within an hour, OceanRealm was shut down. News vans swarmed the gates. The investigation began immediately. Authorities reviewed hours of footage, combed through years of records, and found what insiders had long suspected: warnings ignored, red flags dismissed in favor of show schedules and ticket sales. Rachel's death became a rallying cry. Protesters gathered outside the park. Some demanded justice for Rachel. Others demanded freedom for Kraken. Animal rights groups seized the moment. They had warned of tragedies like this for decades. OceanRealm's official statement called it a tragic accident. It did not call it preventable. In the months that followed, regulations changed. Federal safety agencies banned trainers from swimming with orcas during performances. Surprise inspections became mandatory. Attendance at OceanRealm plummeted. Sponsors withdrew. School trips were canceled. Kraken never performed again. He spent the rest of his life in an off-exhibit tank. No lights, no music, no crowds. Just the hum of the pumps and the slow swirl of water. Rachel didn't die chasing fame. She died believing in something bigger, that trust could tame instinct, that love could bridge the wild and the human. But the ocean doesn't bend to belief. It remembers what we forget. Behind every choreographed trick lies instinct, and behind every applause is a risk. Kraken wasn't a villain. Rachel wasn't naive. They were both trapped in a system that packaged wildness as entertainment. Now their story asks a single, heavy question. What is the cost of taming the untamable? If you think creatures like Kraken should never be kept in captivity, say so. If you think this was preventable, speak up. The truth is rarely quiet. Sometimes it surfaces when we least expect it.